I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. The USMNT recently completed their September camp with 2 friendlies against Uzbekistan and Oman. On today's show, we're going to dig into the September roster and discuss how it might change for the upcoming October camp when the U.S. plays Germany and Ghana. We'll go through each position and discuss which players are safe and which ones are at risk of being left out. And then for the ones at risk, we'll talk about who are the top candidates that could replace them. So to help me do all that, I've invited Brian Sciaretta back on the show. Brian is a writer at American Soccer Now. His work also appears in various newspapers across the country, and he's a frequent guest on TalkSport and SiriusXM. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much for having me on, Frank.
So let's start with I'm going to skip goalkeeper for now, and I'm just going to start with center backs. We had 4 center backs on that September roster: Chris Richards, Miles Robinson, Tim Ream, and Mark McKenzie. Of those 4, which ones do you think are safe, meaning they're pretty much a virtual lock to be on that October roster, barring an injury or something unforeseen like that?
Yeah, I mean, Richards started both games, and I think we know his club situation is not ideal, but he should be back based on how well he's spoken of and how highly he's spoken of. I think Miles, they like Miles Robinson. It's his athleticism is very intriguing, especially when you have a couple of very athletic opponents coming up where they're going to be tested a lot more. And Tim Ream he comes in with always question marks because of his age, and that's fair, but he's still playing at a very, very high level. And, the one I'm concerned about is McKenzie. I think I'm not sure where he stands completely within Berhalter's depth player pool. He's always been on the edge. He's always been mentioned, but he's never seized the grasp on a spot on this team. So I think he's clearly the most at risk. And then I think you have to think, depending on health, if Zimmerman is back, that he'll probably be in the front runner to take a position from McKenzie.
Yeah, it was too bad. McKenzie, he got some playing time in both of the games in the September window, but I didn't think it was, personally enough to really get a good look at him. I mean, how about you? Did you see anything from him?
Those games, and nothing good or bad either way. It was just almost mop-up duty. I know that for the U.S. didn't play its best against Uzbekistan, but by the second half, they were far more in control of the game. They cut out their mistakes, and they weren't tested defensively. So, yeah, I just think that it's tough and for him, and and I still don't see there's still an opportunity because Carter Vickers isn't completely healthy yet, and they're not expecting him back by October. So there's still a lot of the thing with the center back pool, and this is probably a topic for a whole nother show, is there's a big, huge generational gap right now in center back. There's not a lot of young players, 23 and under, even a little bit, maybe 24 and under, that are knocking on the door for a spot on this team. After Chris Richards is probably the youngest, and Chris Richards and McKenzie are the youngest. After that, there's not a lot of can't miss prospects in MLS or abroad right now. That so you pretty much know the player pool as it is, and so it is what it is. But I think it's going to be tough for McKenzie when Walker gets back, and definitely when Vickers gets back. It looks like he'll probably be, it's going to be. He looks like he's going to get bumped some way or another.
Yeah, and how about Austin Trusty? He's a guy that was getting called in pretty regularly first half of the year. What do you think his chances are?
I mean, they're there. I think he's got to really get on the field more for Sheffield United. I think he's seen as a real backup option for them, and one I think that if they're relegated, which seems to be the prevailing wisdom that they will be, he's going to be a big part of like their championship plans. I think that there's a lot more question marks. I'd put him further back of others. But he's there on that list along with guys like Matt Miazga that are still fighting for their way. I think he'll he could get a chance if, particularly if the U.S. This isn't much talked about, but the Olympic team is going to be starting up soon, and because of that generational gap, they're probably going to look to burn two of those three overage spots on center backs. So if you assume four center backs go to the Copa America, and then two national team center backs go to the Olympics that are overage spots, that's six center backs that are going to be used in high level competition next year. So there's a lot of opportunity for these guys to get on the field.
Yeah. And then before we leave center backs, I got to ask you about, Tim Ream. I mean, there was a lot of chatter after the Uzbekistan game that he started, that he had some turnovers, looked a little shaky at times. Do you think he did anything to hurt his spot on the roster?
No, because I think with him, the issue is and look, I've been watching Tim Ream since he's even watched him a little bit at St. Louis University, and then certainly with the Red Bulls. His problem, he's always gotten beaten for speed, and that's if you expect like it hasn't really. It's not really like he's lost a step. He didn't really have many steps to lose when it came to speed. So those were the biggest issues with him. I mean, was that he was put in 1v1 positions further up the field when there's a lot of space in back of him and a lot more options for the attacker to exploit to still get a good opportunity. He can still go out wide and cut back in and cut towards the middle. And those are not Tim Ream positions. So, and they never were. So I don't think he's done anything to hurt his case. I still think he's one of the four center backs. But again, there's going to be questions every camp. Like, has Tim Ream lost it? Has he lost it? He's going to be 36 next camp. So it's fair to keep asking those questions. And there will come a day when he's not going to be there anymore. But, right now, I still think he's in the driver's seat.
Okay, let's go to outside backs then. They called 5 into the September camp, which I usually see 4, but maybe they're wanting to, my thought was maybe test out a few extra left
Paredes
backs and Paredes.
Really,
okay, yeah, you're right.
Paredes is. I even asked Berhalter about this, is how they see him, and they're not discounting the fact that he could be a left back at times or a left wing back, but I still think they want to primarily try to see if he's going to be explosive in the box as a winger. So I think that's option A, and the wing back is option B.
Okay. So then the outside backs they called in were Serginho Dest, Anthony Robinson, Joe Scally, Christopher Lund, and Joe Scally left for family reasons. Then DeJuan Jones was called in for the second match. I mean, which of those guys do you think are safe, and which ones are at risk for the next camp?
Dest is a lock and Robinson is a lock. I think everyone knows that. The backup positions are still pretty interesting. I think Berhalter is going to continue with the Lund experiment for a little bit, and I think the top options in back of them are Caleb Wiley, and this is the left-footed options, not including moving Scally over to left back, which I think they can do, but they don't want to do. I think Lund looks like a backup that they want to continue to give more options to, while guys like Tolkien and Wiley, they might get Olympic call-ups. They look like that would be a good spot for them. And on the right side after Dest is a good question. I still think Scally has the position, but I'd be lying if I say I wasn't concerned with the start he's had to his season at Gladbach. It's been very bad, and particularly, he got the dreaded 6 ranking from kicker over the weekend. You don't know if he's distracted by family matters too, and and you hope everything's okay with that. But a 6 ranking, usually 1 is the elite level, 6 is horrific, and they gave it. It's rare when anyone gets a 6, and he was one of 2 players I think to get it on Gladbach.
And so, what did he do to deserve it in that match?
I mean, he left with Darmstadt up 3-0 at halftime. He just didn't do enough on either side of the ball, and it was a. But again, he's going through some family issues there too, and it was just not a good day. So look, I still think he's one of the better options for the U.S. team at right back. But like I said, we'll see who else, what else happens. I thought DeJuan was pretty good coming off the bench and on such limited time. He got an assist and and was dangerous getting up. And he plays that athletic. He plays that athletically on that side of the field. So we'll see. Scally's got to play a little bit better too, anything could happen there. But I think that still it's probably Destin and Scally with a chance of seeing if someone else comes. I think you might see Jones even more than going back to Yedlin. It's just Yedlin's big thing was his experience. Which he had a World Cup experience. He had 111 Premier League appearances here, but I think it might be Dewan over him right now.
And what about Brian Reynolds, another guy that was called in, more in the first half of the year? Where do you see him fitting in?
I see him fitting in with the Olympic team, to be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, he plays at Westerlo right now, and I don't know if you followed the standings, but it's been an absolute nightmare for them. They're dead last with 1 point from 7 games in Belgium. And not he's not the only reason why they're like that too, but things have been tough for him as well. So again, I think he's a good Olympic team right back. I think there's still some honing of his skills that need to take place, and after the Olympics, the people like to downplay the Olympics, but the Olympics is a great springboard to the national team. We've seen that historically, and some of those players who are on that Olympic team will use that to make a big transition to the national team in the years ahead. But it's a 10-month gig, and I think that's where you're going to see him.
Yeah, it's going to be just really fascinating to watch, these outside backs over the next year. And, like you said, Sergiño Dest and Anthony Robinson are more than likely going to keep starting, but who ends up playing behind them and backing them up?
And they're
pretty
always
open competition.
Too.
Yeah,
definitely. And it's we will see. But yeah, I like the look of I've been very impressed with the left backs this country's been producing, particularly in the last several years. I think that there've been some good ones coming up through the ranks at the youth national team level. So we'll see if that continues.
Okay, let's go to the midfield. Called in 6 midfielders in September: Weston McKennie, Yunus Musa, Luca De La Torre, Malik Tillman, Johnny Cardoso, Ben Kramaski. Cardoso ended up not coming in due to injury, and Tanner Tessman replaced him. So this is an interesting group right here. Possibly have Tyler Adams coming back from injury. Possibly have Gio Reyna coming back, from injury. I mean, how do you think this midfield is going to play out in October? Who's safe and who's kind of at risk of being left out?
I think there's a lot of those guys are safe. I mean, Musa's safe, even if doesn't have a starting job at Milan. And McKennie, even though he plays as a right wing back at Juventus, he's safe and he's going to be playing in the middle of the field. Tyler Adams is healthy. He'll be coming in. From this camp, I think the backup options behind Tyler were still pretty apparent. I think the Uzbekistan game more than the Oman game showed that, while Musa can do a pretty good job, filling in behind Adams, it's still not ideal. You want a little bit more distribution and passing range out of that position, and speed and ability to cover ground. Tessman's a guy I think is good enough to be on this team. He's also good enough to be a starter on the Olympic team, and you have to ask where's the best place for him to go: a full national team where he's a backup, or the Olympic team where he can play. But I think that those are all these options are safe. I mean, maybe not Kramaski. He came out this today and said he's still not decided about national teams where he wants to go. At some point he's going to have to decide if he'd accept a November call up for the U.S. team. I think it's a little bit of a stretch to have him on this team right now, but I still think he's very good. I think he's got an incredible potential, like his size and mobility. But yeah, Gio comes in, position still TBD. I think there's all these guys are going to be in the picture one way or another. If it's not here, it's with the Olympic team, and I still don't have an idea of when Cardoso's coming back.
Okay, so McKennie, Musa, De La Torre, Adams, Gio Reyna, if they're all healthy, do you think those 5 are going to be there for sure?
For sure, yeah. I mean, at some point with it wouldn't surprise me if some more of the old guard comes back. I wouldn't be surprised me if they bring up Kellen Acosta, just because of that uncertainty at the 6, and he has a little bit more experience there. De La Torre is still good enough for now. I think at some point during this cycle, if it could come down to some question marks with him. There's just still not a lot of goals or assists coming out of him at the club level. And yeah, I know he does well against lower competition for the U.S., but again, he's certainly good enough right now. This area position has a lot of more comfortable options. You kind of know who's who and what's what. And again, we could also see like maybe Paxton Aronson comes in and gets a look. And there's a couple others too that are intriguing. Brian Gutierrez at Chicago, I think, is a guy who's better than more people realize, but probably again another one more for the Olympics.
So while we're on the topic of the midfield, I gotta ask you about your thoughts on formations. So a lot of USMNT fans got excited in the Nations League finals when Gio was here, and we played more of that, 4-2-3-1 versus the traditional 4-3-3. People were kind of curious what Berhalter was going to do when he came back in. He seems to still be pretty happy with the 4-3-3. I mean, do you see Berhalter sticking with the 4-3-3 if Gio is healthy, or do you see him going to that more 4-2-3-1?
I mean, the 4-2-3-1 gets more, provides more options in case Adams isn't there. It makes a little more sense. I think the 4-3-3 is better when Tyler Adams is healthy. When Adams is not there, they have to play a different way because there's really no one has shown what he can do. They can do what he does. I think it's just when you have Adams out there, he can push McKennie and Musa further up the field. He's just so comfortable with those guys. But then again, does it leave room for Gio? That becomes a tough question because, then you have Weah and Pulisic up the wings and then Balogun in the middle. The 4-2-3-1, opens that up a little bit more maybe. But then again, with Adams, you still face the same questions. So that all hinges on Adams. I think an interesting thing think about is what kind of formations in the midfield could they do if they do three in the back and have Dest and Robinson as wingback positions. That seems to play to their strengths a little bit too because they are such attacking fullbacks at nature. It does provide a different midfield reconfiguration there too. But again, we'll see. That's something that really hasn't been tried in full with this group of players.
Yeah. And I think I heard Berhalter talking about how he does have an interest in trying that, but that's maybe something on the to-do list a little bit later. Is that what you heard?
Yeah, at some point he's going to want to try it. It comes down to when and who's in camp and really, when he has everyone at his disposal and when he has the correct leader. I don't think you want to try stuff like that with key players missing because it's a lesson that you want everyone to be there to learn. So we'll see. I think it's one of those things where he's going to need, the McKennie, Musa, Adams, obviously the fullbacks, maybe Gio, and then the wingers there too. So that's kind of, I think that they have a lot of pace on the out wide that, they want to try to see if they can put those guys in position to be really good from out wide. So again, yeah, you're right, but I think again, it comes down to who's available for each camp. And fortunately you don't know that till the roster's released. And sometimes even after that, there's a lot of changes.
Right. Okay. So let's move to forwards. Let's start with talking about the wingers next. Christian Pulisic, Tim Weah, Brendan Aronson, Cade Cowell were called into September. Maybe we'll throw Kevin Paredes in there as well since he was called in. Okay, so I'm going to let me know if you disagree, but I think it's pretty safe to say that Pulisic, Weah, and Aronson are pretty safe. And so that leaves that kind of fourth, fifth, winger spot open. I mean, who do you think's in the front running, for that?
I think, all right, when Gio comes back, he can fill both roles, midfield, wing. So I think obviously he's a lock, but, you need to get him on the field too. I think, Paredes is there as an option, and obviously Aronson, he's another guy who's like a Swiss Army knife, can really kind of come in and fit in everywhere. I want to say Paredes, but then again, we're talking about a guy who's made one start at the club level over the last, almost nearly 2 years. That's not good enough to really hand him like a locked spot on the national team. Cade Cowell, I think, is going to downshift to the Olympic team. So yeah, it's a big question right now in terms of like a backup attacker. I think Jordan Morris isn't completely out of the picture yet either, and you know it could definitely come from outside the picture as well. So again, we'll see. There's still other options out there, but I don't have an answer for you right now.
Well, let me just throw some other names out there just to kind of get maybe
Sure.
your take on them. Taylor Booth, Jordy Mihalovic, Alex Zendejas. What do you think the chances are of those three?
Um, Booth, maybe. It comes back to what form he was at now that he's back from injury. I think he cooled off a little bit towards the end of last year. He came, which is okay, which is normally what we see from some young players. It's somewhat common. Mihailovic, he still needs to find more time to start at AZ. Like, he wasn't even used, I think, yesterday as a substitute. That's not good. Zendejas, yeah, again, I know he had a lot of opportunities this year, and I know Greg wasn't the coach too, but I'm sure he's probably concerned a little bit about, I know he scored a goal for Club America over the weekend, but, maybe, but I still think you're probably more likely to see, Jordan Morris return than Zendejas reboot unless he does something special down there at Club America.
Yeah, it seemed like the Gold Cup was Zendejas' big opportunity that maybe he didn't take.
Yeah.
And so now he's going to have to play his way back in with like a great club performance, like you said.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
Okay. Okay, so let's talk about strikers. They brought in two, Balogun and Pepe. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? It seems both of them seem pretty safe to me to come back, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I think with Pepe, the questions is how is his form holding when I know he got a penalty goal for PSV over the weekend, but being said, like there's no way he starts any real big game with Luke De Jong still there. Like De Jong is their captain. De Jong is their go-to forward, and he scored 2 goals yesterday.
Yeah, he's
Pepe came in.
producing.
Yeah, he's producing, and he's always produced. He's a great player.
Yeah.
So the question is how is that going to hold? With Pepe, can he continue playing at a high level when he's not playing with his club, or at least getting a lot of minutes? And there's always concern about that. And there's going to be more competition, maybe not immediately, but Sargent will return, DK will return, Vasquez, who I think is a very good forward, probably has a better chance than more people realize. He's doing very well this season, and I think he's going to be sold for around $8, $9, $10 million this winter. And I think that will affirm that he's a good player. So what do it's these are all, and then PFox scored over the week. I think he's further back.
Yeah, he's going to get
But
some
again,
playing time again now with his transfer.
yeah, I mean, he rejoins the same coach he was at Young Boys. I mean, that was a very easy goal he scored. Took advantage of being in the right position at the right time, which is good. And Ferreira's not out of it. Ferreira's just a different type of forward, in different situation. I don't think he's good for every situation, but it's like, okay, so then and then Haji, we haven't even talked about Haji. So there's a lot of numbers there. I know you don't want to get to the point with the team where they're just constantly playing the hot hand. You want to have them kind of have a bunch of guys who are integrated with the team, who have a lot of good chemistry. I think that's always more likely to produce results than just playing the hot hand. But it's still early in the cycle. Yeah, so I think Pepe and Balogun are the top two right now, but there's going to be a lot of competition coming up there too, and everyone's going to have to kind of stay on their game to continue to make this team.
And then goalkeepers, Matt Turner, Ethan Horvath, Drake Callender were the goalkeepers called in. I mean, Turner and Horvath, seem to be pretty safe. Do you think Callender has firmly established himself as the number 3 for now, or what do you think?
I think he's got a chance to be the number 2 right now.
Okay.
I mean, Horvath, he was a big loser, I think, in the transfer window.
That's true. He's not even going to be playing at all.
No, he was dropped from the Premier League roster, right?
Yeah.
And he's the number 3. Now, that doesn't, like, I don't think people really understand, like, that really hurts training habits too, because when there's like a 7v7 or 11v11 drills in training, you're sitting out then because you're the number three. You're a backup on your own squad's intramural scrimmages. So he's going to get very rusty unless something shakes out. So yeah, I mean, goalkeeping is about rhythm. It's about confidence, and all these other things. Yeah, Horvath, and I feel bad for him, but like, at this time right now, it's just like he's just sitting around doing nothing, and Drake is at least playing, and it could open the door for maybe Slonina, although, at some point you want Slonina to be this leader of the Olympic team. You don't want to lose sight of that team where he can start and play and be part of a team, and then maybe join the U.S. team down the road. I think that would be a great thing for him. So yeah, it's not a good situation right now with so much question marks behind Turner, because yeah, I'm sure Horvath could get the job done for November, or October, but like, you got to be focused in on October about guys who are in the best positions right now, and then return to guys like Horvath when they are in good situations, because Horvath's situation is very bleak. There's no way he can, even if there's injuries, he can't play in the Premier League until they'd have to go to the academy level to call up options, because he's dropped from the roster.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think I kind of threw him in there as safe because I thought he did have a pretty good game against Oman. I know he didn't have to make a lot of stops, but I thought his distribution was really good. Yeah.
I still think he'll get called up, but because I think Stefan is in the same boat too. Only he's not even healthy. But it's just with Stefan and Horvath, they're forcing Greg to look at other options now. It's not, Drake was playing really. I don't really think that there was really nothing he could have done in that Atlanta game, but it became a very bleak situation very quickly. And I think Horvath and Slonina's learning some tough lessons over there too in Belgium, which are good lessons for him to learn at this age. People just forget how young he is.
Well, we will know the answers soon enough. I mean, although they haven't announced a roster drop date yet, I'm thinking it'll likely get named on Wednesday, October 4th, which is only 2 weeks away. The U.S. will play Germany on October 14th and then Ghana on October 17th. Brian, before I let you go, two things. First of all, where should people go if they want to see more of your work? And then second, please feel free to share any final thoughts about the USMNT.
Yeah, if they want American Soccer Now and Soccer America are always places where I'm at all the time. And look this week for a big interview with Christopher Lund. I have that in the works, and then I'll be also splitting duties between the national team and the US U23 team in the months ahead. And next year I'll be in Paris with the Olympic team. I'm very much looking forward to that. So I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the U23s, and no doubt you'll see guys on that team who then make a quick transition into the full national team moving forward. So as for the U.S. men's national team, look, it's nice to see, the overreactions back on social media, and it kind of shows, despite 2 wins, and it's good it kind of shows you that things are back to normal.
Yeah. Yeah, get on Twitter/X and just do a hashtag USMNT search, and then
I think
what you'll see is every other comment is a negative bash against usually Berhalter, but hey, I guess everyone's entitled to their opinions. Brian, thank you so much for joining the show again.
Anytime. Thank you very much.
And thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please share it with a fellow USMNT fan. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Frank Garza 007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.